Peter Hyman.
I found my son's foreskin at tax time. It had been sitting in my inbox on my desk, wrapped and gauzed and put into an envelope, which is where it had been for about the past year, when the Moyle gave it to me following his bris, the day of his bris. So this is what that story is about, the tradition of circumcision. So anyway, I found it, and I needed to do something with it. And I remember asking the Moyle on the day of his bris, what's this? And he said, Nathaniel's foreskin, as though he were telling me the score of a baseball game or something like that. And I said, well, why do I need this? And he said, he said, well, so that you can return it to the earth, and also so that when Nathaniel finds a nice Jewish girl to marry, he can go to this tree and take a branch for his wedding chuppah, which is a canopy in how Jews speak. That's how Jews say canopy. Anyway, so he told me this, and I didn't really know what to do with this information. My wife and I had never really heard of this tradition, but it sounded kind of on paper like a fine ritual, rich in circle of life, mythology, and this agrarian symbolism, assuming one could get past handling bloody waste taken from an 8-day-old's penis, a screaming 8-day-old. So of course we decided to do it, to bury it. But unfortunately we were wrapped up into the sleep-deprived business of actually taking care of and raising this child, and we forgot about it. And then tax time rolled around, and I was reacquainted with my son's only major deduction of 2008. So, terrible. It's awful. Tax humor is usually pretty funny. Anyway, so I found it, and I kind of we resolved to, heed the Moyle's decree. We were really passionate about doing this because we wanted our son to realize he was tied to 6,000 years of pain and bloodshed and lox-based buffets on the Upper East Side. But the dilemma that it raised was, where do we bury this foreskin? Because like most of you and most New Yorkers, we don't have a yard. We had no trees. We don't even have houseplants. So we live in Brooklyn, so eventually we decided on Prospect Park, which is a very beautiful place, and it's home to 30,000 trees. So finding one, we figured, wouldn't be that difficult. So a couple weeks after making this decision, my dog and I, late at night, it was a May night, it was kind of chilly, I recall, we crept furtively through the park. We didn't want to be seen. There's actually a rule in this city code that it doesn't prohibit burying or digging, but it prohibits carrying items used for gardening in New York City parks. I'm serious. So I had gone to Home Depot and bought this little shovel that would fit into a messenger bag so I wouldn't get discovered. But so the park was somewhat empty. There were a few stray joggers, some dudes kind of finishing up a late night soccer game, but no one, thank God it seemed, who would arrest me. So I went into the center of the park. If you know Prospect Park, there's an area called the Nethermead, which is actually very popular, and it's a nice place for ultimate frisbee. So I was looking around, and there were these huge, giant, towering oaks, and there were these little saplings covered by their protective fencing, and there didn't seem to be the right tree. And my own resolution to myself was, if I was going to follow this tradition and bury the tip of my only child's penis on a cold night, I wanted to find the right tree, which I'm sure you can understand. So my dog was with me, and she chased this squirrel and chased the squirrel to the base of what appeared to be a maple tree. I grew up in Michigan, so I know a little bit about trees, because in the Midwest, everyone's kind of a farmer. So anyway, or that's what people here think. So anyway, he was at this tree, and it looked very nice. It was very green and verdant, but its lowest branches hung to the ground, forming kind of a protective layer. Had I been a younger man, I might have been prompted to climb the tree. It was that type of tree. It was the kind of tree you would have climbed. So I looked around to make sure that no one was watching me, and took the shovel out and started digging into the cold earth. And the metal blade hit the ground with a crisp thwack, and it felt good to be involved in this kind of minor act of labor. And a few minutes later, I had a 1-foot deep hole, and I wasn't sure whether this was deep enough. I didn't know if there was a Talmudic decree. And if so, it was probably measured in cubits, so it wouldn't have done me much good. But I just assumed that this would be deep enough. So I unpacked the gauze and opened up for the first time and took a look at my son's 11-month-old foreskin. And it actually had the appearance of a guitar pick, basically. It was about that size, and it sort of looked like a crisp piece of bacon, a little bit dried out. I put it to my nose, and there was no odor. And then I very, very carefully wrapped it back up and knelt and placed it into the hole. And it was sacred. This was a moment. And so I covered it back up and stomped on the ground and reburied it. And I at that time, said a brief prayer, which was a mixture of the Shema and Bob Dylan's Shelter from the Storm that I invented right there on the spot. And then I backed away, and I kind of wasn't sure I was going to remember it, so I hastily drew a map noting landmarks, and the best descriptor for the tree I could come up with was big and bushy. And when my son comes of age, I'm going to pass this document on to him, and he'll be the holder of this information, because I suspect that at some point he'll return to this in 30-odd years and cut down a branch. And I only hope I'm there to receive the frantic phone call I receive when he tells me he's been arrested for the crime of abuse to trees, at which point we'll plead for religious tolerance, blame the mohel, and try to keep the whole thing a secret from his mother. Thank you very much.